Okay, we will open City Council work session Thursday, November 12th. Approval of the agenda.
Moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Going on here, hold on.
Do that? So,
There's a glitch in the matrix.
deja vu.
Time flying here.
Okay.
Okay. Do I have to do that over or do we all hear it? Okay.
Heard it.
You probably heard it twice. Huh? The public comment on this one might be during some of the discussion. In fact, most of it will be. But what I'll ask, because we do this, does anybody have anything that they want to mention not on this topic? Didn't think so. Okay, we'll move right on. Our first item and our only item, because this is what we're doing tonight, talking about the decision-making process for the Cannon Beach Elementary renovation. And I believe Bruce has some introduction for us.
Yes, sir. Tonight's meeting is about the how and when of getting the project started. It's not going to be so much about what the individual's ideas. Those things will be coming up probably sometime after the first of the year. But right now, we want to have a process that's predictable and something that we know what we're following and that the residents know what to expect as we get into the process. We're the first step in our process, we had a meeting regarding the ZCS report of the preliminary conditions. And in that report, they talked about the condition of the buildings, the fact they're made out of wood, are 70 years old, and probably haven't been maintained in 20 years. And so their costs were relatively high in the eyes of some to try to go ahead and get those into shape. But it appears we have some viable funding options if we go from a small scale project to a large scale project. We think we have some funding options, and also we think that we have a funding source for the projects that will eliminate most of the probabilities of the project costing any of our residents. It should not be an additional burden on the tax base. So, that's the pages. And then tonight, we're kind of on step 2. And that's when the council and the community will talk about how decisions were made through the project. And Rusty, are you putting these slides up for me?
Yeah, hold on a minute here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I think we're on slide 3, Rusty. What about the one that says step 2, November 12th? Okay, I think we're off by one. Okay. Again, tonight we'll be talking about how the decisions will be made throughout the project. We won't be focusing on the proposals, as I've said. We'll focus on how decisions will be made so that we can get this thing right. Next one, Rusty. The first question that I am proposing to the council is, who will the decision maker be in terms of deciding what activities will be accommodated in the renovated facilities? We'll be receiving a lot of testimony. Some of it will probably be conflicting, but someone needs to be accountable to the folks that have an interest in this project, that the decision making was done properly. So that's my first question to the council as far as process.
Do you want to talk about these individually or go through them first and then talk about them?
I was thinking individually, but I'll do it any way you all want.
Want to do this individually?
It might help for those that have not seen this to know what questions are coming up on the slides to follow. So we're not spending.
Yeah. Have you seen this?
have you seen this
Well, this is-
presentation?
Email today.
We got an email.
Email to.
Okay, I didn't receive it.
That's all right. Okay, let's go through them first, Bruce, real quick, and then we'll
Sure.
come back to them and do them one at a time.
Okay, oh, well, the question I just asked is who will the decision maker be in terms of deciding what activities will be accommodated in the renovated facility? The next one is, do we wish to duplicate what we call the Fordoon management model of providing information and taking testimony? The next is, how many of these hearings do we think will be necessary if we follow the Fordoon management model? Next thing is, when should we get started on taking public testimony? Next one is, how frequently should these meetings occur? Next is, do we want the input from the meetings to be organized so that the data can be used in decision making? And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get there. Should we have strict time limits for all? Or do we want to provide additional time for those that are making group proposals? Next is, well, actually, that was the questions. There are some other things that will come up as far as explanation of the process, but those were the questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So do we want to go back to first question, which was the decision maker? Comment?
Ultimately, responsibility falls to the council.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree. I think that's an obvious, we are the decision maker. If we choose at some point to create a information gathering or something like that, we'll do that at that moment. But I think we're the ones.
Okay, ready to move on?
Huh?
Okay, do we wish to duplicate Fordoon management model of providing information and taking testimony? And let me do a brief explanation of that. We started out with information, it was policy and science about dune management. That was all done in one meeting. And then we had multiple opportunities in public hearings for people to make their comments. And at the end of our last meeting, we cut off public comments. And then council took its time to go ahead and make the decisions that were made. My suggestion is that we follow the multiple opportunities, but go easy on cutting off the public comment, because this is going to be an iterative process. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, the Fordoon management process to me had a little different aspect to it. But definitely I want to have as much input as we can get. I like the idea of doing it at several times, which would be different days of the week, different times of the day, so that we can garnish the folks that have odd schedules. And allow them a chance to have direct feedback to us, either virtually or live. And also, we have already received a lot of documentation input, so people must be recognized. They can do that at any time to the council. For it to be on the record of a meeting before the meeting, that always helps. Any other ideas on that?
This is a community place, so I think we need to definitely have meetings that will complement everyone's schedule. And so I'm thinking 4 at least.
Probably one of those should be on a weekend.
Sure. Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
didn't we, for the dune management, didn't we have one like on a Saturday morning and a Saturday night? Something like that,
Yeah.
right, too? Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause everybody needs to put whatever they'd like into it.
I think I like the idea of following the Fordoon management plan, we got a lot of public input.
Mhm.
And we then said, okay, now we'll deliberate without more coming in and coming in. So it's got to be a cutoff point. But after everybody's had an opportunity to express their wishes, their concerns. The Fort Dune management started off with the science report. And that's where it's different. I think, however, and we did it the last meeting, but probably ought to do that once more, lay out the scope of the site, the school, what's been done already, as far like Nakus,
Yes,
the other interested parties, address those things. And I don't know where we start to talk about cost. I think that comes later. I think we want to hear what people really want. Those may have to be moderated by budgetary realities. But once we know that, then I think we can begin to look at and say, okay, we've got this input. Now, council, this is what we are proposing. At that point, you might want one more public hearing to address the initial decision of the council.
I'd actually expand upon that a little bit, because I think the input that we're getting and all the information we're going to get is going to create some sort of direction that we'll have, and that direction might have several components. And at that point, we need to reopen input so that they can discuss, like you said, but I would just see more than one on the concept. Once we have an idea where we're going to go, get the feedback from that.
Yeah, and
I think
that'd be the council's call.
right.
Okay, here's something we hadn't thought of. Here's a little change in direction, perhaps. Let's open it up just to address that part of it, and then we close it again. So, okay.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, Robin mentioned 4 days. I'm moving on to the next question, kind of, how many of these hearings do you think we have? Four to start with would be mine. I'm comfortable with that. I think that fits.
Mr. Mayor? Yeah, if we can just go back to the previous question for a minute. I like what Mike was saying, and I think that we will have a corollary as far as the information as we did in the science and the policy meeting. And that can be possibly ZCS talking about the building conditions, the seismic retrofit. We can talk about the cost. We can talk about the financing. Just to kind of get a good baseline for everybody. So I think that's something that would be possible. And I think there's a lot of information probably everybody needs to have before we start the process.
I would wonder too, if we want to talk about the history of the site as well as the archaeological aspect of it. I don't know if we want to get that deep into it or not, but.
No, I absolutely think, in my opinion, I think we absolutely should get into it because that's part of the importance of the site. And I just think everybody needs to know, get the full lay of the land, so to speak.
yeah, I'd like to do that initially because we could take off in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
And that would be our first meeting, like the science and policy we did before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of that's already been presented in the engineering report. It would be good to have a graphic or some photographs too that would be from the inside.
Sure.
I kind of like to see, Dick Bash or somebody from the tribes and maybe
Doug?
Doug.
Doug
Yeah,
Doer? Doug
yeah,
Doer?
yeah.
Doug Doer.
Door.
Uh-huh.
DUER.
Yeah.
I think there are several stakeholders, I might use that term, of folks that we should invite
Yeah, definitely.
directly. Just so that we have those connections that are probably not as tuned into what's going on in town, like the tribes, like the state parks or national parks,
Mhm.
things like that.
Gina comes to mind
And
also.
Gina,
Yeah,
they're involved.
Well,
But
they will be, but
yeah, there are folks that might not be as hooked up with our stuff, so we should invite them. Hey, Bruce?
That sounds great. And we can talk about that maybe at the retreat or something.
be good.
But I'm sorry to make us move backwards. The number of hearings I think we were talking about.
Yeah, I was just thinking if we had a weekend, a weekday daytime and a weekday evening time, and we did 3, and then scheduled a 4th possibility, that might be a way to start. If we do get overwhelmed within those 3 days, we have the 4th, and if we still get overwhelmed, we have the 5th. We can keep adding. But I would want to limit it. I don't think I would want to go.
Are we
To
talking
start with,
about,
absolutely. Yeah, I'm sorry, Rob.
go ahead.
No, that's just,
Are we talking about January? Because I think with the holidays coming up, that it's going to be too much for people to do
I don't think,
right away.
no, I think we're looking at January,
I would,
aren't we?
let me just disagree a little bit with that because January or the holidays are when people think about that building. At least the locals do. So I would want to try one before the holidays, just to try it. I mean, if nobody shows up, we still have others scheduled, but
Well, the way we're
That's
one,
coming
but I wouldn't
awfully
want the
soon.
whole.
No.
yeah.
Well, and if we look at our schedule that we have already, it's pretty intense.
December's getting booked up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see having one and then moving the rest of them into January.
The other thing is, well, scheduling, had this been a normal year during the Christmas break, so people with kids could be included, I guess, I don't know. But that's moot now.
Well, could we have that first meeting being kind of the first report as we begin our process? Where we kind of lay out the scope, the history, the various options. I could see doing that in December, but not starting the hearings. But then there's a gap, you do it
Right.
then and then you wait a month.
Well, and to be fair, are we going to give that presentation each time so that everyone that's there
Yeah.
would have the same benefit?
That's a good point.
I don't think it's very
We'd have to-
practical if we want to ask certain stakeholders to,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think if we do something like that, that needs to be at one meeting.
Samir?
The other thing is that Rusty set us up with a specific web page on the website for discussion of the Cannon Beach Elementary School. So any information that we get, we can post on that, and then we can remind folks frequently to check that out.
Yeah, advise them before they come to
And it's up now.
And
review
it's up,
that.
yes,
Yeah,
I checked it out.
And we can make that first meeting prominent on the website so that people can get the history and hear from everybody. So I think the background one we can do once, but it's going to be available 24/7 after that.
and it would be available on YouTube as well, right?
Yes.
That's
They wouldn't have to sit and read, they could hear, listen to it.
Okay. So when do you want to do that? Before Christmas, that window between Christmas and New Year's?
let's ask staff when they think they could be ready for that.
Yeah, that's going to be pulling a lot of people together, especially in weather too.
There's a lot of other demands on staff right now, as you're well aware. Bruce, do you have any thoughts on how long it would take to kind of get that first presentation available for the public?
I think we could do that the second or third week of December. And we can invite all, the stakeholders that you mentioned. And if they can't make it at that time, they can always come to a subsequent meeting and we will have them speak first.
But wouldn't we want to have something where everyone could do the presentation that could be played? It wouldn't be like we would have some piece of it left out.
No, yeah.
It should be like a performance where we
Right,
have the whole message together.
yeah, I totally agree. That would be our best situation. I'm just figuring that there will probably be some people can't make it, all at the same time, especially as we approach the holidays. But our goal would be to set a date as soon as possible and then start inviting people and saying, please do all you can to be there. We could possibly also take, I don't know what you call it, a video presentation and play it if they couldn't make it. Well, we can work on that.
So they can make a video presentation where they are and then send it in to us. And we can put
Yeah.
it on the webpage.
Also, I'm anticipating that most people will be attending by Zoom. And so if there's somebody that wants to do it by Zoom and they can send us a PowerPoint in advance, then we can do essentially what we're doing right now with each one of those folks. Because I'm not sure if by September we're going to be ready to have a room full of people. Did I say September or December?
Yeah, you said September,
But we knew what you
we knew what you meant.
You guys are used to me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that we can pull that off, Robin, by letting folks know, set it up with Zoom and you can present and we'll kind of film the whole thing.
Well, I'd say shoot for that. I'm just skeptical that you can pull it all together in that short of time, but I mean,
Well, and if people have the capabilities of doing it, I mean, it's kind of sophisticated in some ways.
Yeah, but they can just get in front of a computer and speak.
well, let's go
That's all
for
you
it.
have to do.
Okay.
Okay, so on that one, I'm understanding that we'll have 4 to start. 1 will be second or third week of December. And that's the one where we'll try to pull, get the information out. That'll be the science and policy equivalent. And then we'll start working with anybody, and assuming that they'll be Zooming in, and work with them on developing PowerPoints or whatever they need.
Okay.
Sounds good.
We'll follow up in January with the next 2 or 3 and try and do them closely spaced so people don't wander off.
We'll try to schedule those at our December work session and we'll know a little.
Depends on how busy the work session is, but yeah, it'd be a good start.
I just don't think we can do it right now. So,
Oh, scheduling them? No.
yeah.
But should we try scheduling the December one now or?
I would,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
December one.
Yeah.
My calendar's outside. So I can go get it.
You might have to.
Okay. Because I know there are a few realtor meetings too.
short break so we can
All right.
December. Probably shouldn't be the 11th. That's Hanukkah.
That's probably not a good day.
We will not do it on Hanukkah.
So is our regular meeting on the 1st?
Yeah.
Yep, the regular meeting's on the 1st, the work session's on the 8th, the retreat is on the 15th and 17th. The 22nd is planning commission, which is the Tuesday the following week. Design review board is on the 17th. So those are your night meetings. Well, the retreat was during the day, but those are outside of council meetings, those are your other 2 night meetings, is DRB and planning commission.
Jen, what about the 9th and the 10th?
The 9th and the 10th are open. Let me double check. I'm looking at the calendar in two different calendars. Let me check the other one.
Our retreat starts at 11 o'clock. Is that right?
Pardon?
Our retreat is starting at 11.
Yeah. Yeah, the 9th and 10th is completely open.
Well, I get a haircut on the ninth.
After the library desk.
Can't miss that or I get in trouble.
I'm just saying, I gotta wait another month.
Well, either that or we could probably maybe, well, we could try the 14th, but you've got a pretty busy time with retreat. Although, if we were to do it on the 14th, and that's assuming the room is open, I think we could have a good discussion about how it went and what we might change or something while we're at the retreat. So I think there's a benefit to doing it before the retreat.
They're open on the 9th and 10th, and maybe the 14th.
I'm out of town on the 10th and the 14th. We have coffee with.
We have what?
Coffee with the counselors?
That would be on the 21st.
Okay. 14th's fine.
And the room is available on the 14th.
And we probably need to decide, is this a night meeting, an afternoon? And I think we shuffled them around the last time, but the first meeting, I think we did make it an evening meeting
Yeah.
for science and policy.
Yeah, I would stick with that for the first one. So the 14th is sounding like it's it.
Yeah.
14th, does that work?
So we're going to be seeing a lot of each other that week, huh?
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one.
Just like always.
Okay, at what time?
Do it at 7.
Should we do it later?
Give people, a lot of people get off work, they get something to eat. Make it like a regular council meeting time. Does that work?
The only thing with that would be is if you plan on having a couple hours of conversation, it does make it a late night.
Maybe we should do it 5:30 like we usually do for work sessions.
Yeah, that almost sounds better. Then we have it open-ended time.
Or 6 o'clock, maybe.
That works,
Yes, they're at 6
Brandon?
o'clock, because that's what planning and DRB does. So if they wanted to eat beforehand, maybe.
I prefer 6 over
Yeah,
5.
6
5:30
o'clock
is
might
hard, I think.
So 6?
6 sounds good then.
Okay,
Okay,
it's on the 14th.
yes.
I have one more question about that meeting. If we're presenting the scope of the site stuff, do we want to open it at that point for some input? Or are we just doing the presentation?
I remember,
So go ahead.
I remember the last time when we did this with the Fordune, we had all the presentations, and then we did open it up for some brief conversation,
Mhm.
a public input. And I think that's probably good because people are going to get charged up about it. I think,
I think they already are. I mean, we've got
Yeah.
people listening now that have already wanted to speak about what they want to do.
Right.
So
right.
I think,
When did we agree to?
6 on the 14th?
so, okay, we will have some public discussion at that point. After the presentation.
Sure.
Okay. That's what it is. That's what it is.
We ready for the next question?
I think we kind of, yeah. Kind of jumbled a few together there, but
And the next question was, how frequently should they occur? And with Fordune, we wanted, I think it was like 8 meetings or something. And we wanted to do it within a couple of weeks. And so we had sometimes 2 meetings a day, often 2 meetings a week. And since we're only doing 4, we might want to talk about spacing those out some.
Well, and we had more of a rush to accomplish that too.
Yes.
And there were a lot of experts and information we needed to get.
I wouldn't want it to drag out, but I think we could probably take a little more relaxed
Yeah,
pace. But I want to drag it out because this is a project that everybody's energetic and excited about, and I want to keep that enthusiasm built.
They are, but we sure need to let everybody share what they think.
We did it in a week.
Yeah, that they could count on
In a
maybe.
month's time, we've had an
Mhm.
opportunity to cover all of it.
Yeah,
Maybe once a week?
Start over again, Bruce. Couldn't hear you.
So once a week?
Yeah, through January somehow. Yeah.
Okay. Right, and we'll give you a schedule at a workshop. So we'll try to cover, a morning, a weekend, evening, that sort of thing, so you can take a look at it.
Yeah, if we could talk about that on the 8th of December at the workshop, that way we would have it hammered out on the 14th and be firm about what we're presenting on the 14th.
Sure.
Okay.
By the 14th, I should have that presentation done. So, because the agenda will be out by then. By the 8th, within a day or two of the 8th.
Okay.
Okay. Next question.
Sam, this is one that you and I talked about a little bit, and that's, do we want the input from the meetings to be organized so the data can be used in decision-making? And I'll tell you, any project I've ever worked on, we did this, but it's not easy to do because you don't always know what categories you want to track. But where I see an advantage is if we're tracking that there's, for example, people want to use classrooms either for classes or, club meetings or whatever. If we can get an idea of how many people are interested in, then we've got an idea of how tightly we might be scheduling. Or maybe we find out that there's only, now I'm sure we won't, but maybe, we don't need to buy a stage or provide a stage because only 2 people want to play music or do a performance a year. So I'm just saying that if you can go ahead and kind of tabulate that somehow, instead of all of us working from our notes, it allows somebody to catch up and say, oh, this is why they're doing that. That's my recommendation. I'm not sure how we can accomplish it, but I wanted to put it out there for your consideration.
And I
I
was,
like the idea.
when Bruce and I were talking about it, my feeling was, and I'm probably would do this my way anyhow, is if we each individually keep our own method of keeping track. I'm going to do it one way or the other, probably either way. So I just didn't want to have to hire somebody or do any sort of outside, just lays on another layer of confusion as far as I'm concerned.
Bruce, how do you think you might keep track of that?
I'm not sure. In the past, it's been somebody from an architectural firm and they know what data they want to collect. And so I'm not sure. I don't, like I said, I really don't know exactly how we would do this. And Sam, I understand what you're saying and when we talked about it the last time, but if all of you do it on your own, then we don't have any record unless you're all going to turn your notes over or whatever. So if somebody was trying to say, well, why did they make the decision about such and such? There's no data to go back to. And that's what I was trying to provide. And the other thing is that I think it can be a useful tool if we're challenged regarding our funding source. If we can talk about those kind of things and say, these were the sort of things that were requested, I think that might be able to help us. It's not mandatory. I think it would be helpful.
I agree. I really don't see us being able to do this without having some sort of tabulation what was said and categorizing it into the different styles of suggestions.
Yeah, I agree with that. After the close of our public hearings by the end of January, if staff could put together a summary, I'm looking at Jen.
Add a little more to our work.
Put together a summary. I like the idea of categorizing it. I don't know what those categories would be necessarily, but certainly.
They'll present themselves.
Yeah, I think it'd become fairly clear. And then that would be one of the first things the council looks at in order to help make a decision what those next steps are. And I don't know what that's going to be.
Well, and the public will keep us accountable because they'll remember what they said. And that's what will help us a lot, is if we forgot something, I'm sure they'll remind us.
And then we can say, okay, well, these are the basic elements of a gathering place that we'd like to see. We're going to have to make decisions. How do we get that implemented? And do we phase it? Can you try to do it one time? Certain things you do before you do others. That's where we get into the real nitty gritty, where after we have the input, we can make those decisions.
And Sam will have his list. That's for sure.
I would encourage you all to keep your notes, but I think I solved our problem, in my mind anyway. And I'm not going to say who it's going to be, but he works in a trailer in the garage.
What are we talking about?
Mr. PowerPoint.
Yeah.
No,
Oh.
we'll do it. Yeah. I'm sure that because the gentleman is a data hound, as he calls himself. So I think that we could put that together and run it by you.
Then we can beat that up, decide what to do with it.
Yeah, that would work. I just want to emphasize that there is a difference between this and the Ford Dune management process. That was more of a opposing opinions, whereas this is a creative endeavor. So ideas that come in, it won't be checking off the 5 that said one idea and saying, okay, there's 5 of those and there's only 2 of these, so the 5 wins. It will be more of a way of how do we incorporate the one item so that the second item can also be involved. So there is a planning element to this compared to a choice element.
It's more free flowing.
So, and that's why I think receiving documentation from folks, a letter is one of the best because I can go back through the letters and cull out the emphasis that people put into how much they like one item on another. So that is my preference, and we would have that on record to start with. And I think Jeff is an excellent choice to help us collate that.
Yeah, you might have 20 or 30 people all wanting the same thing, but only 3 or 4 wanting something different. And that's where we'd have to weigh it.
Well, and we've always done that by having a board where people would put the dots and say what they thought was important.
Well, I think the uses will be blended together.
They will.
Yes,
It's not going to be just, this is the strict use and that's the only thing you can do with it.
we can't do,
It's going to have to blend together.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that will help us as we start to think about the ultimate design of what goes into the facilities. So they can be a blended use, a multiple use.
Well, and what Bruce did say is about giving this information to the architectural firm. I would also like to keep that open about who that firm might be. I would like to see as many firms as are interested in participating or presenting something to have that opportunity.
I think we'd have to go out for bids on anything.
Well, we could also do it like Sculpture Without Walls, where we had people come in with their
Make their present.
ideas. And then, of course, you could encourage maybe 5 of them to go further. But it could be a real opportunity for us to do something that's so unique and fits our community.
Yeah, some cities actually do that and solicit ideas for a city park.
Mhm.
And then from those, they pick one or two or three, maybe they pick one and then negotiate with that one. So, you know, those aren't dollar and cents bids, those
No.
are conceptual visions.
Mhm.
And yeah, it might be interesting.
And Robin, to your point, we have not selected an architect. We did select ZCS based on their experience in evaluating buildings. But
Right.
this will be a significant project and a significant contract. And so we will go through a process, advertising. We have to make up our scope of services so that everybody knows what it is we're looking for. And then they literally do propose and say, this is how I would do your project.
Well, and with Sculpture Without Walls, we already have a setup where I don't know if the records have been kept, but it was an open opportunity for anyone to participate.
Yeah, you didn't go out to individuals and invite an individual
Right.
firm. You just said it's open, anybody.
To the Northwest,
Yeah.
I think was what we, yeah.
Can I
Yeah,
just add real quick, there's certain state laws you have to follow because of the dollar amount too. So
Right.
There are definitely things that you have to advertise in certain newspapers of certain circulations. And so there are definitely specific ORS rules we'll have to follow as well.
mhm. Keep
No,
us
that
in
would
line.
happen. The first threshold is you evaluate what all the firms put forward as far as their experience and their qualifications. And you have to work start negotiating with the firm that you feel is the most qualified. And then you go to the second firm if you can't make an agreement with the first, but you have to rank them on qualifications first without knowing anything about price, or they can tell you how they propose to do the project, but not show you necessarily designs. So it's a strictly mandated or regulated process.
You guys are really good at getting way ahead of us on his questions. So
Well, he said that word, so I had to hit it while I could.
I think we'll get back to that some more detail, but let's jump to your next one was the
Time limit?
timeline.
Yeah. And we had a 3-minute, and we have 2 sand timers to prove that. But do we want to have a strict limit for all? Or do we want to provide additional time for those that might be making group proposals?
By group proposal, you mean somebody representing a group? What do you mean?
Yes.
An organization?
And I see, for example, that Beth is on, and potentially instead we might be able to have like somebody come and talk about a community garden, as opposed to 30 people spending 3 minutes talking about a community garden. So there's benefits to the council if it can be more organized. There's time issues. There's all those things. It's just if we're going to have rules, we need to tell people in advance how we think we're going to do it. And this is one that we can sort out later. You don't have to tell me tonight. But we do need to have some guidance on this.
You can't leave it open-ended. That's a killer.
Right,
Yeah.
but I think maybe 3 minutes isn't enough time. I'm thinking 5.
How about 6? Because
Okay.
that would be the 3-minute twice.
Yeah, it could be. A lot of people may not
Yeah, we're
want to
limited by
talk.
technology, so
Yeah.
it's either got to be 3 or 6.
What about,
That's right.
high tech?
We could do it. I'm going to go back to this because this is a design process rather than a sort of debate. Ideas take a little longer to present.
Yeah.
So I agree with, let's give them more time. what is the best amount of time? I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes. I can't imagine 5 or 6 minutes not being enough for somebody.
That's a long time.
I think for a lot of people, they would just
Yeah.
like to make a statement in support or against one proposal or another, whereas a select few will actually make a presentation
Mhm.
and would definitely need a little more time.
And I do, yeah, I suspect somebody's going to get down in the weeds and want to know how far away certain measurements on things are going to be. That's where I would
That's when
start.
you use the gavel.
Yeah, that's where I would say, okay, let's give them 6 minutes. But yes, I think most people are just going to be yay or nay or I support. So I would say that's right now, say 5 or 6 minutes with some privilege to the presentations by official groups.
Okay. And also remember, most of these presentations will probably be virtual. So it might change things. I'm not sure exactly how, but it will be a little bit different than, people just one after the other, like we had with Fordham.
Well, we have a really, really fun trick. We have Rusty can push the mute button. But we'll watch that.
Okay. All right. So that was the questions for council. The next probably 5 or 6 slides are trying to, well, actually, it's a proposal for a process that I'm asking council to look at. You can either accept it or come up with another process, but I think that we've only gotten as far as people coming in and telling us what they would like. There's an awful lot, the nuts and bolts happen after that. So my recommendation would be, we're calling step 3, that's when the community comes in and talks about what their aspirations are for the project. When they're doing it, that they may talk about things that are very specific, and some of them will be general. In the process that I'm recommending, I would ask that you kind of keep those in your mind as general, because the next set of decisions that'll be made are not about whether you're going to have the Mexican dance class or the fly tires coming in to a particular space. It's going to be about those two need classrooms, and they need very different classrooms. So that's the kind of thought process you'll be going into. So people will come in, and when we're done with the 3, 4, 10 meetings, whatever it is, the next step is step 4. And that's when the council will be making decisions about the type of spaces that will support the ideas and aspirations they heard in step 3. We don't have to make the decision on the Mexican dance group versus the fly fishers. It's, it's classrooms. It kind of goes back to the thing about the data and what data you folks are tracking, because we need to say that, like right now, there's 4 classrooms. Are there any modifications to one classroom we might want to make? We know we have a gym. Is the gym going to be for, there's going to be people saying they want to use it for athletics. There's going to be people wanting to use it for social things. There's going to be people wanting to use it for concerts. That has all kinds of ramifications in trying to figure out sound systems, floors, acoustics, those sort of things. So that's where the next part, or the decisions that council will be making. Somebody might be talking about gardens. We might not decide exactly what type of gardens, but we'll say we need to leave space for this, for gardens. That sort of thing. So we'll work through that, but it's, we're not saying yes to one, particular event. It's what kind of spaces do we, and direction do we provide to a designer so they can start developing schematic designs. Any thought or comments on that? Is that comfortable, uncomfortable?
Yeah, maybe I'm kind of going back to, I think maybe Sam suggested that we make sure that we've invited, not just put in the paper or on our website, but invited certain groups. And it occurred to me that one of those groups or groups of individuals would be the hotels and business owners that might utilize this as a tourist-related facility for meetings, conferences, their own workshops, training, a number of things. And I'd hate for this to be, that we'd lose sight of that. First of all, that's one of the reasons we're doing it, and one of the proposals on how we're going to finance this is it's for the industry, our industry, which is a tourist industry. So just, I don't want to just assume that the hotels and businesses will just somehow be aware of this. I think they need to be invited.
I think they also just a touch bigger, not bigger, a touch more involved than invited, because that's the industry that is going to help us understand what amenities are available.
Exactly.
They are the folks who know how to make meeting spaces work. So there is a little bit of professionality there that I think would be a very helpful addition. Bruce and I, when we were talking about some of this just between us, I had a little bit of pushback from the word spaces. And I think amenities works better for me, but types of space and how it's used is within the space, the different things that make it work better.
May determine how flexible that space has to be to provide the amenities we're talking about.
And I think that flexible is an excellent word, because that's, we want this to be as comprehensive as possible so that there's every possible chance to use it.
And Mike, I agree, and there's conversations going on, I believe, in the chamber. I will be following up with Jim on that, because they are definitely a group that we want to give more than 3 minutes. And they need some time to go ahead and organize themselves. So I think that's important. So, but they would be under the input section, which is step 3. It's step 4. You will have heard all of that information, and you have your notes and the data and all that. And that's when we will be providing direction, that would go to an architect for a design.
This is where I want to pull back a little bit. To me, that's a little premature, because I think the city council needs to kind of come up with a concept. That's nothing on paper. That's just the idea of how the building would work, and represent that to the public, so the public can come back and say, oh, you guys are way off, or you're right spot on. Just so we have a little confirmation of what we're planning on as the city council before we approach some sort of professional who thinks he can draw it up and tell us exactly what to do. I want to be able to tell him exactly what we want him to do.
Well, after we got our act together and what our proposal is, let the city know, public know what we've gathered from all these meetings. This is what we understand. This is what we think we can accomplish. Have that as one more round of presentations, or at least one, before we would then go talk about the process for getting the final, designs and construction and so forth.
At least one, yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is, we, as council, we have to be aware of the fact that this is a layered project, because when I originally wrote my stuff, I was totally focused on the gym. Now we might have the possibility of adding the classrooms. That's going to be a big discussion. But we're also talking about the exterior, the grounds of Maker's Park, which we have a proposed plan already kind of established. And we have to work around that. So there's not just 1 or 2 buildings, there's also an exterior. And I suppose we should throw in any long-range future for the food pantry also. But that's
that, and the The grounds itself,
At the parking,
is, if that what you're referring to as the exterior?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm sorry, the outside,
the property.
the gardens and all the proposals that have been banted around for quite a while outside.
I think we have the makings of a plan.
I think-
Now, there was a list here of the people that I thought I saw
Yeah, can you go back
Rusty
to-
kind of go to that at one point, but is there a list of people or groups that you had kind of put together there, Rusty?
Oh, no,
I think it'd be the next slide. It was just a list of things that might.
Oh, yeah, we hadn't got that slide.
okay, sorry.
Okay,
Robin's getting ahead of us again.
well, I just saw it and I thought, hey, what's that?
We're going too slow for
The next, why don't you go to the next slide, Rusty?
Okay,
There, yeah.
What I'm saying is that, and I hear what you're talking about, you know, from the design, that kind of thing. But we need to make decisions on these elements. You know, are there going to be classrooms? Are classrooms for clubs, classrooms for classes? How many, you know, is one heavier than the other? Gym to support athletics, social events, cultural amenities. There's plenty that can come into this. Historical amenities, there's a lot of history there. Tribal exhibits, gardens, different types of gardens. And if we can get through and make those kind of decisions, I do understand what Sam is saying. I think that a long conversation with any designer you have would be excellent to convey what your ideas are. I just think that if you go to a professional designer, they're going to be working from surveys, you know, all sorts. I think there's going to be a higher level of sophistication, and nothing gets done that's not acceptable. So my recommendation when we get there will probably be to have an architect actually pull the plan together. And I know that might not be everybody's favorite recommendation. So anyway, but these, whoever does the initial design, these are the kind of decisions that got to be made. It's not, again, who's going to go into the classroom. It's how many classrooms do we need? What are they going to be used for? And again, using the example of the dance class versus the fly tires, dance class is going to want open space. Fly tires are going to want a lot of light and a lot of tables and chairs. So it's a different space. We have to figure out how many of that type of each we're going to have. And then going to the next slide, whoever again decides this, once you've made those decisions, that's when you can start, what would be the design process.
But I think all these decisions would come after we go back to the community and say, this is our general plan for the.
Sure.
We're not going to do that before we go to the community.
Okay. And then when you do get into design, having a design professional do the work, there's going to be two aspects going on. One will be creating the concepts and developing the concepts as far as what's going to go on in the buildings, that sort of thing. They're also going to be working on another track, which will be to develop structural designs for the seismic resiliency, having water and sewer, power, all, you know, the roofs, all those things will all be going on and be worked on at the same time we're talking about, you know, what's going to happen outside in the yard and all those kind of things. So there's two parts to occur because, again, to a degree, I'm thinking that we kind of want to move this thing along. And I think that if we're going to have the classrooms, and that may or may not be true, and we're going to have the gym, that we might as well be starting on the structural and the code issues with those without waiting until all of the kind of functional design is being done. That'd be my recommendation.
I totally agree with that, especially with those items that are very basic structural stuff, like a new roof on both of the buildings or something like that. Because those are going to take some time to get the documentation and the engineering set up and scheduling a roofer, which from what I understand is really difficult around here.
It is, and supplies are
So
getting,
I would almost say, let's schedule the roofer now.
Get on his
We have
agenda.
Yeah, that way we'll have a time in the summer when they can work on it and we can get this started. There are probably other components that are going to take some dramatic engineering that I can't think of off the top of my head. But some of the stuff interior, I know, might take some time just to get together. And there's a few of these things that are just simply finding a contractor to do. Karen will be on top of some of that and getting the place maintained. So yes, I agree with Bruce's comment on that one.
I just want to make sure that we don't, I don't know the situation, but we spend a lot of money repairing the roof and then go in to do the seismic retrofit and have to tear holes in the roof.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just want to make sure we've looked ahead far enough that we know that we're not going to undo something we just did.
And Mike, we're already talking to ZCS because if we do need to replace the roof, and Karen's working with a roofer to give us a price and those kind of things, the roof, the skin in both of the buildings is going to be taken off. And when it's put back, it's going to be related to the seismic resiliency and the seismic upgrades. And so us putting a roof on now, unless we do it to the standards that we're going to need to meet, then we will not have met our seismic resiliency. And if you're going to be doing the roof, it's got to connect to the walls and the walls have to be upgraded. So it's not, I think that it's going to be, it's a complicated situation because it's a retrofit. And my recommendation would be that we get to the point that we have a general contractor who can deal with all those trades rather than us trying to act as the GC. But you're right. If we do any part of it, we need to do it so that it will meet the criteria for its eventual use.
Okay. Just want to make sure we.
Yeah, and there was items in the engineering list that came up in that light. The fact, I talked to a contractor recently about how do you do seismic retrofit? And his first question was, what are you doing? And I went, well, and so he finally explained to me it's attaching to the foundation, the walls attaching to the roof attaching this way. It's all these attachments, and each one is a little different depending on what you're doing to open the wall or open the roof. So you can do parts of the seismic at a time. It doesn't have to all happen all at once. And I probably know how to do those better than I do. But I know that strapping is an important part. So, okay, enough on that. Okay. That's all of your slides, Chris?
Yes, sir. Can I just say one other thing so that people have got it? We're going to make sure the information about the project is readily available to interested parties. There'll be a special web page for the project. The minutes and exhibits will be in the website. And when they're ready, any designs that we're contemplating or concepts will be available on the web page. And the meetings, including this one, will be available on YouTube. So anybody can go back and watch what meetings have occurred, what conversations went on, and what exhibits were shown.
And I would ask folks that are interested and do check out the webpage to remember to check it out again, because we're going to be updating it.
Yes.
As we go. So there will be new information. So keep track of what you studied. Okay, at that point, I have Andrews here. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I guess I'm here because my board asked me to kind of follow this process, and something that our founders were both passed on, Billy and Michael, were, always interested in. I see now through this meeting that we're kind of planning to plan, so I'll save those kind of comments till I think it's step 3. But I guess I just say thank you to the council. I'm glad that this is finally, at least in the city's hands, and it's moving along. Sam, I know you've been working this one for a long time, and Mike, I mean, you took our board members on a walkthrough, I don't know how many years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, so we all appreciate it. But yeah, I'll say, we want to just, as someone who manages a city-owned space, I think we can, and who produce a lot of events that kind of work in these types of spaces, I think we could be valuable in the going forward. And then just on a personal note, speaking specifically of the gym, it seems like this is going to be a long process until everything's ready to go, and especially when we talk about redesigning and, everything be ideal, but if there's any way in the near term to get the gym just in an inhabitable state, I think for the community, its space provides a lot of options during the COVID phenomena. So if there's any, if we can make that work just on it doesn't have to be pretty, but I'm sure that there's a lot of groups in the community that could, find a little use for it in this difficult time. So that's all.
Yeah. Great. And I definitely know that the Telephone Arts would have been one of the groups that we would have invited to make a presentation, obviously. And so, but I agree also, I was very, I felt very positive after the engineer's report, in that it might be possible to get into the gym as is, sort of, but still safer as a building, because some of that more advanced upgrades were not as required for the code. So I think that's going to be exactly what Andrew was saying. Thank you, Andrew. I also have 2 other folks who asked to be recognized for speaking. Beth, I believe, is asked to unmute. I don't know if she's with us or not.
I saw her up there earlier. Yeah, her iPad's there.
Unmute.
There you are.
Yes, I am. Well, I just have this brief letter that you all have in your packets that I just not sure where we were headed tonight, but I'd just like to read this to you. Dear Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity to join this joyful collaboration. We appreciate all the council and staffs for envisioning this legacy project. Last spring, when the diverse group of local citizens formed to support the idea of a community garden, long lines were forming at the food pantry, and food security was on many minds. We were inspired by the response of the community at large, including Clatsop Nehalem tribal leaders. We feel that 1, community garden will provide an essential resource, a kitchen garden for food, security, and educational opportunities. 2, the kitchen in the gym will be a natural opportunity for cooking and preserving food classes from the garden. Excuse me. 3, the garden will increase resiliency and sustainability as we connect with this natural resource. 4, the garden will be consistent with the draft master plan for Nescus Park and will build a connection with the tribal leaders who are willing to share their knowledge of harvesting from the land. 5, we envision a beautiful garden as a gathering place at the entrance to the town, one that evokes community building as a core value. We urge you to include the community garden concept in the final plans. Thank you very much, the Cannon Beach Community Garden Committee. That's what I have.
Thank you, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you all.
I have another name.
Sorry,
We have a meeting.
I realized that would sound like that.
Alex Carney. Do we have an Alex Carney on the list?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Alex.
Hey. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the council for having this space and letting us sort of chime in. It sounds kind of to Andrew's point, it sounds like we're sort of planning to make a plan at this stage. So I'm not sure exactly how my thoughts might fit into that strategy, but I think the main thing that I wanted to bring to the attention of the council is what I think is a significant importance to the Clatsop Nehalem Federated Tribes, and how critical and important I believe this site might be to them, and how it's very, very important that they are kind of front and center in this conversation as far as what we choose to do with this land. Frankly, I think ultimately it should be given to them, would be my personal opinion. And I think that all those types of options need to be on the table. So the details of that, I think, are, going to kind of sort themselves out. But I just think that's very, very important.
Thank you, Alex. I can just mention the fact that I have been personally involved with the tribes throughout this process and working with them through the many iterations of how to acquire this property. And last I heard, things can always change, but the last I heard was that they were most appreciative that the city has acquired it. And we are going to partner with them with absolute partnership there. So
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I don't have anybody else on the Zoom.
John's here.
I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
But I do have people in the house. So John, did you wish to add any more to your comments?
I sent an email, and I know you've received it. And I guess I would just really like to highlight our gratitude for the time and care that you've all put into this project to this stage, and that your plans to continue that care speak volumes to all of us who live here. We were just really, really appreciate your sacrifices and your wisdom. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay. It's good to see all the folks who are listening in. What do we have, about not quite 20?
We had about 22, 23, I think.
22. Okay.
Wow.
I want to double that before the end of this process, at least. So let's talk it up around town. I want folks to mention the fact that we are going to be having these public hearings, and that we have this process that we're trying to evolve so that we, the council, can make the right decision. Anybody else have anything to add?
Well, it can always be a topic for discussion at our Coffee with the Counselors meeting on this next Monday at 10 a.m. You can zoom in on that. The Zoom link will be on the city's website. So if you want to discuss it then, that would be great. All of this is preliminary, so we can bring back the comments to the council and then offer the opportunity to speak at the council hearings as well. So yeah, I think I'm excited.
I am too. Now, that brings also to mind the fact that as a council person, I have been approached by folks who aren't comfortable with speaking at the group. So if you are, try and keep track of it, because that is stuff that we need to document. So just keep your own little journal on it, maybe. I had somebody today come in the gallery and mention the fact, oh, I can't be at the meeting. I told them that we will have other meetings. So at this point, that's all that. But I have also been doing this for 10 years, trying to get this project going, and have a lot of past contacts that I would like to readdress. So at that, Bruce, do you have anything to conclude?
No, sir, thank you.
I'd just like to thank Bruce for kind of leading us through this process. I think it's a good one. And, you know, he's had experience with other projects, as all of us have. But I feel very good about the process we've embarked on. And again, thanks, Bruce.
Well, thank you, Mike.
I do too. This is going to be positive. We have all these negative things happening. Let's do some positive.
I second that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, anybody have anything for good of the order that's a different topic? Nope, then we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much.